A segment of this video is sponsored by Bones and All. A Court of Thorns and Roses. I've seen this book mentioned for years, and just when you think it might settle, Booktok, which is TikTok Bookstagram, which is just people talking about books on TikTok, bring it back. And I had no gosh darn diddly idea what it was about. But before we hop into my education on the matter, the next section of this video is sponsored by Bones and All, only in theaters November 23rd. So first love can be pretty intense. It starts with that crush and then builds into an infatuation. The thrill of those emotions being reciprocated until it feels all-consuming. It doesn't matter what anyone else says, it's the two of you against the world. And that's a journey that Bones and All is looking to take you on, with a dark twist. Directed by Luca Guadagnino, starring Timothée Chalamet and Taylor Russell, Bones and All tells the story of Marin and Lee and the love that builds between them as they set out on a 3,000-mile odyssey through the back roads of America. But it's not quite as cute and simple as that makes it sound, because no matter how hard they try, all roads lead back to their terrifying past that threaten the survival of their love. And that's honestly just scratching the surface of what this movie has in store for you. I don't want to give too many details because I just feel like it needs to be experienced. It's a genre-bending coming-of-age infusing horror and dark romance, just the kind of stuff I love talking about on this channel. Just think about that title, Bones and All, should really let your imagination run on it. I'm getting shivers. Like so many of the best horror movies coming out lately, we have that surface level of what's happening. The suspense, the thrills, the horror of what the characters are actually doing and the tension that builds. But then we get the deeper levels of what those actions signify. Just taking you on this journey with people living a life that probably is nothing like the life you're living, and then balances that all in with the urgency of a first love. Has there ever been a more perfect movie for me? Then on top of the premise itself, I feel like the movie just looks gorgeous. It just has such personality to the shooting style. Like even the clothing had an immediate effect. Like the day the trailer dropped, so many of you guys were linking me pictures of the sleep shirt turned day shirt that Chalamet is wearing in the trailer, and I couldn't find it, so I just went ahead and bought myself a different sleep shirt to wear as a day shirt. Chalamet has consistently been knocking it out of the park with his performances lately, and I've been so excited to see Taylor Russell in a leading role like this since the first time I saw her back in 2019. So if you're a fan of dark romances, thrillers, horrors, and coming-of-age stories with a dark twist and just generally the stuff I like to cover here, this is absolutely the movie for you. I'm going to want to talk about it as soon as possible, so make sure to check out Bones and All, only in theaters starting November 23rd. Thanks again to Bones and All for sponsoring that section of the video, and now back to our regularly scheduled idiocy. So again, going into this, I had no idea what it was about, but when I was asking for book advice on Twitter, some of you little rascals let some of the premise slip. That basically this is like Beauty and the Beast with horny fairies. Seems to be one of those bridge books. It's something that, like, by all other metrics, it would be perfect in that young adult section. But then there's like just enough violence and raunchiness to relegate it to the general fantasy section, but then not shoot it quite into that romance category with things like 365 Days. Which is exciting to me, truly. I'm giddy. So let me take you on a journey. My journey of whiny girl and the opulent horny fairies. I know, I'm a wordsmith. This all takes place in a universe where fairies used to rule the world, but the world's now essentially been divided into two sections. There's the fairy realm and the mortal realm, but something is threatening the collapse of both. And then the fairy realm specifically is divided into a bunch of different courts because book title. Book title. And the courts are spring, winter, autumn, summer, day, dawn, and night. Then there's this separate island called Highburn where an evil fairy king rules on a throne of human bones. So that super fun that guy seems like. He seems like the Palpatine type baddie who's like looming around waiting for like the imminent threat to be dealt with, so he'll be around later. In terms of young adult counterparts, a lot of this reminded me of Shadow and Bone because you've got people in different sectors that have different types of powers. Then you've got a girl taken away from the only life she's ever known, taken from poverty into the riches. There's kind of some Katniss Everdeen vibes with her because she's like the sole provider for her family. Now I know a lot of people were telling me that I had to read the second book at the same time because the second book is where it all really picks up. And I will if you want me to, but this book was out for an entire year before the sequel was released. So there were tons of people who only had this book before going forward. So if you like this video and want to see me cover the second book, I want some likes. I will probably do it anyways, but I'd still like 15 to 20,000 likes to keep going with this series. Thank you. And my first impressions after finishing this book were, it's fine. It's one of those rough situations where the protagonist is so often unlikable that it overshadows a lot of the good ideas and good characters. The story itself just drags so much in the first half, and then by the time we get to the third act, it just turns into this like huge exposition dump, and we're just flying through interesting information and interesting characters and their motivations while we got to spend multiple chapters of her being whiny. I just think maybe there was a structural issue. But we're following Feyre, a 19-year-old who's essentially the only useful member of her family. I guess they used to be wealthy, but then all the money ran out, and when the debt collectors came to call, they like smashed up her dad's leg. So he just stopped trying to do anything, and then their mom got sick, and her dying wish was for Feyre to promise to always take care of the family. Which is a lot of weight to put on an 11-year-old. How about you tell your husband to get his head out of his butt and be a provider? And he remains pretty useless 8 years later, and her two older sisters, Elaine and Nesta, just lament for the old days and do nothing of value. And because the family is so insufferable, it kind of makes Feyre insufferable to us as readers because she's so damn bitter. I don't blame her for being bitter. That can work as a protagonist. Katniss was pretty bitter, but she's also just insufferable. So I guess humans used to be subservient to fairies until they fought back and developed a treaty, which is what led to the division of the land. And most humans are very afraid of fairies because there's all these myths and legends of them being these torturous, cruel monsters. They can shapeshift into animals and kill humans for fun. But then there's also a religious group called the Children of the Blessed, or the Blessed, who worships them like gods, so I'm pretty interested to see where that goes in future installments. Love a good religious cult. So when Feyre is out hunting a deer and a big old wolf shows up, she's not sure if it's a fairy in beast form. She needs to kill it either way because it seems to be hunting the deer she needs for her family, but it turns out it was in fact a fairy. A great beast the size of a horse with the body of a bear and the head of a wolf comes crashing into their cabin, demanding the treaty rule be upheld. Life for a life. But offers up an alternative. Instead of death, Feyre can come live in his castle in Prythian, the fairyland. Oh no, what a terrible choice. To be fair, if you were raised your entire life to think that fairies were murderous torture creatures, that would probably be a terrible choice. Which brings up some mixed feelings in her. She hates the burden of being the sole provider, hates how no one else tries, but she also hates that her dad just let this happen so easy that he didn't try to fight for her at all. So she heads out, and if you were expecting some kind of like magic teleportation, no. She has to ride on his back. A classic. The first contact. I feel like there has to be some fan fiction out there with him in beast mode. Yeah. But when they get back to his mansion, he transforms back into this blonde-haired beefcake named Tamlin. But he and everyone else on the ground seems to have these masquerade-style masks fused to their faces. So this whole part of the book is very annoying. First, she spent all her time whining about her family, and now she's whining that they've forgotten about her. She's basically acting like she's being tortured, all while she's being told she can do literally whatever she wants except leave. Pursue any passion, learn to paint with the supplies he buys her, eat great food anytime she wants. She is not here as a servant. But that obviously means that there's more going on here than meets the eyes, like Transformers. But you know, that seemed fairly obvious. Very obvious. I'm sorry, I'm so tired. But yeah, lots more going on. It is revealed that this man is not just fairy nobility, he is the High Lord of the Spring Court, the ruler of the entire place, and the man she killed was one of his dear friends and subjects. So it's a little bit sus that he's just down to let her live a significantly better life than she had before. So here's where I'm at. It'll be revealed that some kind of blight is spreading through Prythian that's weakening the magic and ties into the masquerade event that resulted in these masks being permanently fused to their faces. And apparently Andras, the wolf she killed, was on the other side of the wall trying to seek out a cure. Did he by chance stumble upon it by allowing himself to be killed by a suitable bachelorette? We'll see. I kind of assume so. It's Beauty and the Beast. Now obviously her hostility and whininess will have to flip at some point. Like, this is clearly a romantic pairing in the making, the captor to lover trope. Is that a trope? Oh god, it is. Oh no. Okay. captor lover. Issue being, I feel no physical tension here. Even later when they start getting along and there's some moments of cuteness. Like he takes her to this magical glen and they swim in something that feels like the galaxy and she's turned on by his muscular body. I let myself indulge in the glimpse of a broad chest, arms corded with muscles, and long, strong legs before I walked right into that pool. Tamlin's glorious body was honed by centuries of fighting and brutality. Like I see her saying the words, I just don't believe them. Honestly, I feel way more of a spark between her and Tamlin's friend Lucian, but he likes it when Feyre is being snarky and feisty, which is all the time. And while we will get some interesting aspects of Tamlin's background, and I'm sure there's more to come, Lucian's just way more compelling out of the gate. I'd love to follow a story about his life. So in a way, I was kind of rooting for the two strong personality types to have a love connection, but no. Not in the cards. She's gonna get handed the bland Lord of the Spring Court. It's pretty bad that the cast of the male leads I sift through makes me not like the mostly stable, polite, non-abusive ones. But before the romance can truly bud, the blight starts to become an issue. It's letting various malevolent magical creatures spread into the court. She even gets tricked by something called a pucka or a puka that makes her think her father and a family have come to rescue her away. Thankfully, Tamlin stops her from going too far and explains that the reason why they haven't and won't come looking for her is because he glamored them into believing that she was off taking care of a sick aunt and orchestrated a series of good luck for them so they wouldn't be left in squalor. So not only is her punishment for killing his friend living a lavish life in a palace, because he was so bothered by the little cabin they lived in, he had to make sure they were set for life. Honestly, pretty sweet life debt to be paid here. Not only do you no longer have the burden of providing for a family that you so clearly dislike and resent, you also don't have to worry about them freezing and starving to death. But then someone turns up to the castle who seems to work on behalf of the person who might be at the heart of this spreading blight. But Feyre understands very little from this conversation, and the only clarification they give her is that some fairies are the source of the horrible myths and stories about the torture she heard all of her life. And this nameless woman is one of them. So my assumption is that this woman that they're talking about, that Lucian and Tamlin clearly hate but are also a little afraid of, maybe the daughter of that Highburn king, and she wants to do the same thing with Prithian that he did in Highburn and rule the whole place as queen and then kill all the humans, or some variation in there. And I feel like she probably also has some interest in Tamlin, who might have turned her down because that would be very Beauty and the Beast. Now, up until this point, I've been like, okay, we're at like the halfway mark and these fairies aren't horny at all. But don't worry, the book comes in hot. There's some kind of spring ceremony happening, a Callan made to build the magic of the court to regenerate the land for the following year. And Tamlin won't explain how the magic is made, just that there's going to be a lot of fairies from all over around it that she has to stay away. It's a giant orgy, isn't it? It's a giant orgy. Okay. She hasn't caught on though. She is very upset that she's not invited. Though I tried to ignore it, my chest caved a bit. Cause she feels like they just built this new connection. Now he's like putting baby in a corner. And then she feels worse when she finds out that Tamlin has to perform something known as the Great Rite that apparently involves being topless. It's an orgy. Now first she wants to be there because she feels left out, but then she starts to feel something in her stomach urging her to go. It's like the magic in the air is calling to her. So she wanders out trying to conceal herself with a cloak and obviously gets noticed. This is a fairy magic party. I assume she has to be some kind of like nexus zone of dead energy. So this group of evil fairies start grabbing at her before, in her own words, the most beautiful man she'd ever seen saved her. More like they scattered the second he showed up. I swear to God, if this ends up being a new love interest, the dangerous one she should stay away from because all these YA stories need a triangle, I'm gonna lose it. Oh my God, wait, maybe he's the Gaston character. I'm sorry. So he's another high fae, and he's probably of the Night Court based on the character description. Now thankfully, outside of some menacing comments, he lets her leave, which is when Lucian finds her and Twilight runs her back to the castle, all while calling her an idiot. And of course, it's because I was right about the rite. It's gonna fill Tamlin with an incredible amount of magic, take control of his mind, body, and soul, and turn him into this great hunter. Specifically, a maiden hunter, because he's maidenless. Is that still a relevant joke? No? Okay. But he's got to find this maiden so they can couple and release their magic and spread it across the earth so it can regenerate life for the next year. Didn't hurt themselves with that metaphor at all, did they? So he gets to make his way to a secret cove where all the lady fairies will be waiting as options, and then whoever isn't the maiden becomes fair game for everyone else to mingle with. So yeah, I was right. And Lucien confirms what we all knew. If Tamlin had smelled Feyre out there, he would have claimed her, but as this magic, mindless monster, not at all romantic. Tonight is not for lovemaking. Man, that's all she needed to be told earlier. Probably no, she probably would have been really pissed off, and she would have been pissed off about that. Now, she's obviously horrified that magic could make him do that to her. So interesting little loophole there, but she's also tantalized by the thought that some feral part of Tamlin wants her. These women need to get their priorities in order. But because she's incapable of listening to the most simple instructions, she wanders out of her room for a little late night snack and runs into Tamlin, still under the effects of the magic, with handprints all over his body where people were grabbing at him. But he's just all fired up that he could smell her and not find her, so the magic made him pick someone else. A backup maiden. But he's using this as a way to like flirt with her, talking about how the replacement maiden told him he didn't have to be gentle, but he would have been so gentle with her. I would have had you moaning my name throughout it all. And I would have taken a very, very long time, Feyre. Look, I guess that's one way around writing a bland character. But at least she has the self-respect to say that she wouldn't want to be someone's leftovers. And his response to that? He bites her neck. What is it with all these men biting? Even Edward Cullen had the decency to contain himself. Don't worry though, guys, it wasn't to break the skin, it was just to keep her in place. They have a bit of a sensual moment here. She's mad at herself for wanting every hard part of his body pushed against her when she should be pissed at him, and then he's mad at her for not listening to orders and leaving her room twice. So he growls off. He's a very growly, roary boy. But they get past it and have a sweet moment the next day where he reveals what he truly values about her. Of all the lovers he's ever had, of every nobility, none of them understood what it was like for him. The responsibility he has to care for his people, the personal sacrifice it requires. But Feyre does understand that. She carries the same burden, and they see and appreciate that within each other. So precious, and their love just continues to intensify as they rush into the summer solstice. And this one she is invited to, but despite all of Lucien's warnings not to drink the fairy wine, she does get drunk on it, which makes her super giddy, and she dances all around with no inhibitions, which just leads to Tamlin finally kissing her, and they have this beautiful moment on a hill as the solstice switches over, and it's the happiest moment of her life. So obviously everything's about to go to shit. Apparently the Blight pulled an Anakin Skywalker and killed 24 younglings at the Winter Court, eviscerated their magic before destroying their minds. Which is when Rhysand shows up, aka the most beautiful man she had ever seen, who, as expected, he is literally the ruler of the Night Court. As expected, Lucien and Tamlin don't really like him. Lucien specifically taunts him about someone named Amarantha, whose bed must be getting cold without him, so I'm guessing he's the lover and plaything of the woman we got the inklings of earlier, and as expected, she is the one who started the blight. And also, as expected, she made some kind of offer to Tamlin, who turned it down, but Rhys said it looks like he's mostly given up at this point, so he should probably just give up and go back under the mountain, which is presumably where this Amarantha person is staying. Look, if you have that much power and you're taking over entire kingdoms, why would you want to be underground? That's so depressing. But the whole time he's been here, they've had Feyre glamored as invisible and hidden behind Lucien. But once Rhys realizes she's there, Lucien has to pretend she's with him. I assume that there's something going on with this blight that's like a curse attached to Tamlin finding love, so if Rhys finds out that she's there for Tamlin, that's leverage against him. But of course he finds out, he uses magic to enter her mind and reveal every little naughty thought she has about Tamlin. She's wondered about the feeling of your fingers on her thighs between them too, he chuckled. So Tamlin is left begging him not to tell Amarantha, but to be safe, Feyre still gives him a fake name, except it's the name of someone from her old village, so rip that girl, I imagine. But because he doesn't think he can protect her, Tamlin wants to send Feyre back to her family. And she gets so whiny about it. Like right to his face, dropping lines like, "Who wants someone around who's so covered in thorns?" She's so dramatic. Like, I get it. You love him. You finally realized how hopeful life can be and it's being ripped away from you. But it's not because he doesn't want you around, shockingly. But you know, it's not being ripped away from her intimate moments. moments. His kissing was slower this time, gentler. The fingertips of his other hand slipped beneath the waist of my undergarment, and I sucked in a breath. If we keep going, I won't be able to stop at all. And of course they don't stop, they go all the way. And I just like to highlight some of the artistic wording they use to keep themselves out of that 18+ romance section. He slid down between my thighs and feasted on me. He sheathed himself inside me. We moved together, unending and wild and burning. And just as she's drifting off, she hears him say, "I love you," he whispered and kissed my brow. Thorns and all. It's so romantic. So after a lot of fighting from Lucien, who also doesn't want her to go, presumably because all this would be solved if she would just tell Tamlin she loves him, she's sent on her way. And it seems all the more obvious when Tamlin once again reaffirms that he loves her, but she doesn't want to say it back because she doesn't want to cause him pain? Ma'am, I think you not reciprocating his love is what's going to cause him pain. She assumes that because she'll grow old and die and he's immortal, her expressing love would just be a further burden on him? It's so stupid. Big dumb. I don't understand what the logic of this was. Whatever. Back to the humans, who she is already now judging the heck out of. Unfinished, graceless creatures of earth and blood. Damn, that's your people. But it seems like the glamour didn't work on Nesta, the worst of the sisters. That within a week, she'd hired someone to take her through the woods and to the wall to save Feyre, but they couldn't find a way through. My hateful, cold sister had been willing to brave Prythian to rescue me. It feels kind of weird though. She was like the most ungrateful and wasteful of the family, and it's being flipped that she was wasteful and hateful to try to force the dad to actually try and provide for them, while also saying she had some hatred towards Feyre because Feyre could provide for them and she couldn't. Like, ma'am, just do something? Or better yet, just don't spend all the money on stupid things? But whatever, it's a nice moment. She's a changed woman and she gets to vent about how much of a failure the dad is. But here's that shoe I expected coming to drop. Richie McRichdad says he's thinking of buying the better land because the whole house was burned down and everyone died, but they still can't find Claire's body. I imagine that's because she's under a mountain being tortured by Amarantha. Couldn't have just made up a fake name, Feyre? So she immediately heads back to the spring court only to find it completely wrecked and abandoned, but Alice, Feyre's central maid, is still there hiding and explains everything. AKA exposition dump! And I wasn't so far off. Apparently Amarantha was the king's most lethal general. During the war where the humans were fighting for independence, her sister was betrayed by her human lover Jurian, who slowly tortured and killed her for Amarantha to find the pieces. So Amarantha already hated humans, but now she like extra hates them. And on top of wanting to kill all the humans, she also decides that she'd like to be the queen of Prythian, and did this by poisoning the 7 High Lords at a ball and stealing most of their powers. So she is specifically the blight, and she has taken up court in this sacred place under the mountain. Wait, that means she's the one who just went to that court and killed all those younglings. How very Anakin Skywalker of her. And as expected, she lusts for Tamlin. Tried to get him right up until she stole his powers and then kept trying after that. But he refused to give in and like really tripled down on that after she cut out Lucien's eye during negotiations. But to make amends and apologize for doing it, she hosts a masquerade so Lucien can cover his new scar. Look, I get that she's a ticking time bomb and you feel like you have to make a good show and hope for peace, but like maybe bringing your whole court to this event was a bad idea, because she reveals that the only way she'll agree to peace is if Tamlin agrees to be with her. And instead of just giving a little, no thank you, he says in front of all of her guests that he'd take a human to his bed, even marry one, before ever touching her. Then topped it all off with a little jab about how even her sister would rather spend time with humans than her. So she curses him. He has 7 times 7 years to find a human girl who hates and would kill a fairy, willing to marry him to get his full powers back. And when he fails, he has to join her under the mountain. And then the curse included the binding of the masks to their faces so that he couldn't use his like natural godlike beauty to help lure someone in. There is so much going on here, and it's spanning over centuries, and we're getting it all at once. But the time ran out, so Tamlin is under that mountain with all the other courts just because she didn't want to say I love you back to burden him. But she heads out to get her man, ends up in Amarantha's throne room and says she's here to claim her love. And Amarantha is super into the fact that Tamlin let her torture and kill the wrong girl for days to try and protect Feyre from ever being caught. Oh, you are delicious. You let me torture that innocent girl to keep this one safe, you lovely thing. Very cartoony if you want the full level of how evil she is. She has the consciousness of the human that killed her sister trapped in a ring made of his finger bone and eye and talks to it. It can't talk back, but he's just stuck in there. But Feyre is lucky. For whatever reason, Amarantha is bored, so instead of just killing her, she'd like to make a new deal with her. Complete 3 tasks of her choosing, solve her riddle, and she'll release Tamlin, break the curse, and everyone is free to leave the mountain and be free forever. And if she solves the riddle, it'll all instantly be undone, but if she fails or answers wrong, instant death. And this is that riddle. There are those who seek me a lifetime, but never we meet, and those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. Now the answer to that riddle, keeping in theme with the book, is love. The answer has always just been to say love. Just say the word, Feyre. But that would be too easy. We still have like 80 pages. I feel like that was an intentional toss to readers to figure out before her. I feel like I looked at it for like 2 seconds and was like, maybe it's not, but it feels like love. She can choose to answer the riddle whenever, but until then she has to do these tasks. And the first one is defeating a giant blind worm. And she manages to outsmart it and kill it in its own bone pit, but not before it gets a bite off on her. And because Lucien wasn't able to get down and heal her right away, she starts getting an infection. So when Rhys shows up offering to heal her arm in exchange of her spending 1 week of every month with him, she agrees because she knows she'll probably die. And this little weirdo marks the deal by branding her with a magic tattoo that has an eye on it, which I kind of assume will let him spy on her. Just gross all around. Oh god, the second book is going to be a Persephone and Hades retelling, isn't it? So now he's a whole new thing to navigate. He likes playing games. It seems like he's trying to hurt Tamlin, making her dance provocatively in front of people with paint all over her so people can see exactly where she's being touched, like purposely getting her like super messed up on this wine so she doesn't even remember anything she's doing. Night after night, essentially the plaything of the plaything. No kissing or anything below the belt, but still gross. But they obviously need to humanize him, like for whatever reason he didn't just say, hey, that's not the human I saw. Feyre can also feel his sadness over the loss of the Night Court and the fact that he'll mercy kill people that the Queen wants him to torture. The pesky little implied sex debt is just a side thing, it's no biggie. He even helps her beat the second task by using the tattoo to guide her hand to the right option once he realizes she doesn't know how to read. But that second task really broke her. If she lost, it was gonna crush her and Lucien, so she's freaking out. And the only thing that stops her from completely shattering is him licking away her tears. And as disgusted as she is, he seems to think that a part of her liked it. Oh yeah, we're getting some love triangle drama. So flirty and fun he is. And while at this point she's essentially given up and assumes that Amarantha will never let her leave, she does get some renewed hope. She manages to sneak a moment with Tamlin before one of the evening events, but there's no discussing their game plan here. Words weren't necessary. I tore at his shirt, needing to feel the skin beneath one last time, and I had to stifle the moan that rose up in me as he grasped my something. But all too soon, as she's fumbling with his pants, Rhys pops back in and urges Tamlin out before they're discovered. Don't you worry, love triangle fans. Rhys then has to kiss her to make it look like he's the reason the body paint on her is all messed up. And also to piss off Tamlin, you see, he thinks that if he can work him into enough of a fury when Feyre wins, Tamlin will be so enraged he'll splatter Amarantha instantly. He does not at all like being her plaything, but he also definitely likes Feyre. But it's time for the final task. Amarantha wants her to stab these 3 innocent fairies in the hearts. 3 lives for the liberation of Prythian and her love back. And she actually does it? Like, I thought she'd immediately start racking her brain to solve the riddle, but damn. And it's seriously messing her up, and when she reaches the last person, it's Tamlin. That's the trick. Feyre kills Tamlin, and he's technically free of Amarantha. But Feyre knows it would be very weird for Amarantha to even risk this. If Feyre cared more about her own salvation than her love, she could just do it. And Tamlin is the one thing Amarantha wants, the one thing she's been fighting for decades. Why would she take that chance? So she starts to rack her brains for all of the information people let her hear that they couldn't directly tell her, and remembers Lucian saying something about Tamlin being pretty soft for someone with a heart of stone, something that would immediately seem metaphorical. But then she thinks back to the day that she first heard about Amarantha from her messenger. He also mentioned Tamlin having a heart of stone. So she thinks that he might actually have a stone heart and stabs him. How convenient that she could just remember all that, but okay. So he doesn't die, and Amarantha takes the loss about as well as expected. She attacks Feyre. Tamlin's still healing. Rhysand tries to help but fails. So she starts just laying into Feyre, screaming at her to say that she doesn't love Tamlin with every hit, but she won't. It's the one thing she won't let her take. Which finally makes her realize that the answer to the riddle is love. Finally caught up with the rest of us. Sick. So instantly the curse breaks just like she said it would, and all the masks fall away. And instantly Tam's on Amarantha, stabbing through her head with a sword while ripping out her throat with his teeth. Damn, there goes the cartoon villain. And to save Feyre, who's now dying on the floor, all the High Court lords come forward and place these little drops of light into her. And when she wakes up, she's been resurrected as a High Fae. Yay! Honestly though, that is kind of sick. Too bad she is just utterly haunted by the faces of the two people she killed. But they push that all aside to another day so they can make up for lost time. That means they got intimate. But let's not forget that little deal she made. In the middle of the night, she wakes up being tugged away. Obviously, it's Rhys. He says that he's leaving and just wanted to say goodbye, so she asks him why he tried to help, and he says it's so that he could be remembered as someone who actually tried to do something, and that so she wouldn't have to fight or die alone. And then leaves her with a genuine, kind, good piece of advice when she starts talking about how she may be High Fae now, but her heart is still human, and she doesn't think she'll ever get past what she did to those people. He stared at her long enough for her to look back before saying, "Be glad of your human heart, Feyre. Pity those who don't feel anything at all." I'm gonna be honest, he seems way more interesting than Tamlin. I might actually be down with him as a love interest. I like how we played this all out like a game of chess right to the last moment to make sure that Tamlin wouldn't retaliate on him. I like that he's morally ambiguous. You're not really sure what his full motivations are. All the stuff at the parties was super gross, and obviously the life debt stuff is gross, but I think we can fix him. But before he leaves, he gives her some kind of shocked look and then stumbles before vanishing. So who knows what that was about, but I am certain we will find out. But for now, it's all happily ever after as she and Tamlin head back to the Spring Court. So mixed thoughts. I think some of that was really cool. I think some of the characters had super compelling backstories. I think there's a lot of interesting lore built in here. But then I just feel like the layout for the book is staggered weird and feels awkward. Why did we spend so much time with her whining? But honestly, where that left off, I am very interested to see where it goes, less so from the Feyre standpoint and more so from just a bunch of these other characters. I just want to know what Rhys does. I'm just interested to see where it goes now that we're outside of the Beauty and the Beast rubric. Will Feyre be less annoying? Will she get with Rhys? What will the Highburn King do now that Amarantha is dead? Will they be hornier? Time will tell. Leave a like. But let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Have you read this series? Don't give me any spoilers, but let me know. Do you think I'm going to enjoy where it goes? Let me know what you're thinking. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon and YouTube channel members for supporting. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my social medias are down below if you want to follow me. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.